If, when, and how do you hear God's voice?
I'm going to answer it with an I don't know. And I only say that because I've never had this like moment where it just feels like this is what the exact thing, like not through a worship song, like not through the Bible. Like those are all ways, like obviously those are ways that I go and I communicate with God, but I think God has something for each and every person, and it's okay to not know how he's talking to you. He's going to get through one way or another. He's going to talk to you. He's going to give you what you need, however he feels is necessary.
All right, we're back. That's cool. What a great rest we had. So this question Rob had.
Well, don't say it like that, because then I look kind of stupid. I kind of look stupid sitting here going.
I mean, I wanted to talk about this before we got here. I was just curious about your guys's, I guess, just a general explanation of your guys' walk with Jesus, because you grew up in the church, and I guess to your point, like you wanted to talk about was, we can start with, has anybody been super impactful in your walk and knowing Jesus? And
how?
And to lay a foundation, I guess, have you always believed? Like you said that, and we hear this a lot, you know, you knew about Jesus, but you didn't have the relationship with Jesus. Was that the same experience for you guys?
I think for me, like, growing up in the church, it was kind of like all I knew, so I didn't know that there were other, like, I even remember being like, when I started like becoming friends with like my neighbors and stuff like that, and being like surprised that they didn't go to church on Sundays, because that was just like all I knew. I was like, oh, like their people just like don't go to church on Sunday.
That's
like,
crazy.
Like I know, and I was like, oh, like it was just so like, it was just like,
not
it was,
normal.
Yeah, it was just so like foreign to me. I was like, oh, like you don't go to church on Sunday. So I think that like that was definitely like hard for me to grasp. But I think even knowing that, like I don't think I ever had a period of time where I like, that wasn't my belief and that wasn't my faith.
You really never questioned?
Yeah, I didn't really question a lot. Like there were obviously like circumstances in my life that I think pulled me farther away from my faith, but it was never a like, oh, I don't know if I should be believing what I believe. It was always just like, I would need to work on like building that relationship back up.
Yeah.
But like even from the time that I was like a kid, like I can remember like I wouldn't want to go into like Sunday school. I'd want to stay in like the big service, and I'd be like worshiping. I would raise my hands and worship like from the time like that's what like my earliest church memories that I have, and that's why I think it's so like fitting that now I am on the worship team, because that had been a passion of mine from when I was like a little kid. Like most people, if they discover like a talent with singing, I feel like it's like, oh, I want to be a singer when I grow up. For me, I was like, I want to lead worship. And so I just think that that's so fitting that that's where I ended up now.
That's so interesting. So your walk was, I mean, I guess it's just been with Jesus the whole time. Because
I mean, there have been times when I've been like farther apart than I could be, but like I've never once like questioned it.
Because in my coming to faith, realizing the truth, right? Because you have this, there's a lot of people that say in the secular world, or maybe in the like lukewarm, I guess you could call it, Christian world, where they would say like, I don't want to push my beliefs on anybody. But coming to the realization that it's not just a belief, but this is real. The truth is God exists, Jesus was here, and he loves you. It's not just some belief I have. It's not just something that, you know, I put my faith in, but I like, it's real. It's actually a thing.
And
it's
like,
the
that's
truth.
What, like, that's what you're living for.
That's what you're living for. And that's, I think the epitome of that is you saying like, people don't believe in God? There's no way. That's crazy. That just blows my mind. Did you have the same experience, Josh?
I don't know if I really did. I think I like felt similar, like in the sense of I've always believed it and I've never actually questioned it. I do remember making the decision to put my life in Christ, put my trust in Jesus, and I got baptized. But I think like it never changed what I believed. It was just more of me making like the public
like an affirmation.
profession. Yes, saying like, oh, I do believe this, but it was never like, you know, like I can even remember as a kid, like I wanted to take communion because I was like, well, yeah, I believe this, but you know, so I don't know if I think I ever doubted it. And I think, you know, being around, I know who you're talking about, you know, our neighbors who weren't Christians, and I don't know if I was shocked. I think it was just more like, oh, you know, they don't go to church, whatever, you know, not everyone does that. Because I knew that wasn't a thing everyone did, but Yeah, I don't think I ever had any time in my life where I didn't believe in God or doubted anything.
Bella was
So
more sheltered than you then.
I guess,
Well,
yeah.
yes, we were homeschooled, but Josh was
Oh, yeah, there you
from when we were younger, we were homeschooled. Josh did go to.
I went to public school.
He went to public school in kindergarten, and I
okay.
didn't.
There you go.
So I was homeschooled up until I was in third grade.
Right.
So I didn't have that like one experience that may have been why Josh had more like exposure to
Yeah,
the
that
world.
totally makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I was like, people talk about like their Sunday plans. I was like, oh, like don't you go to church
I'm
on
going to
Sundays?
church.
Or
I think I have a memory of like them saying like we were praying at dinner time and I'm like, you guys pray at dinner, right? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh, okay, well, whatever. Like,
it's like,
Some people do.
Okay.
yeah.
That seems a little weird.
That's just so
but
funny that the world is now the weird thing, you know? Like,
Yeah. Right.
they're the people that are set apart from your world. That's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah, you Mason.
Yeah, Mason, how did that?
I mean, like I said earlier, I've always grown up in the church, but I really didn't have my own faith. Like I just would tell like, oh yeah, I knew about
Right.
him. I had a lot of questions. Like I said, I tell you about questions a lot. I was always questioning something. I never really like fully understood it, and I still to this day have a lot of questions. And I feel like that's reasonable in faith to have questions, right? But it took me until I got into my freshman year and really started like understanding the problems that I was having and how much they were hurting me.
Yeah.
To like really put my trust in God and say like I need to change.
Right.
I want to fix this problem, and that's what kind of started it all off. And like I said, I did it with my one buddy. Still to this day, my best friend. We talk about everything together, and we kind of built our relationship with Christ together, like as a team. We went through things together.
That's so cool.
And I know the question was like some people that helped. There were a lot of people like in my life. So my dad, me and him are very close. Like love him to death.
Love that guy.
He's amazing. He's like me and him are identical to each other. We love to talk. So he's always played a huge role. But two of the guys that like aren't family that played a huge role. One was my 10th grade Bible teacher, Mr. Irwin. He doesn't go
Shout out Mr.
Shout out
Irwin.
Mr. Irwin. I don't know if he's ever going to see this, but I love that man. He was a great guy, and he actually had a similar issue that I did, and he shared it.
Wow.
And it hit it hit me.
Yeah.
And I was like, if this guy who's teaching Bible now, he was the coolest guy ever. He was hilarious. We had so much fun with him.
Mr. Irwin's a G.
Yeah, really. I was like, if he
I'm
is
so sad I never got
if
to
he
happen
is able
for
to
a
like,
teacher.
if this guy is the coolest Bible, like he's the coolest guy I know right now, and he struggled with it, and he pushed through, and now he's living happy.
Yeah.
He's not at our school anymore. Sadly, I love that guy. I wish I saw him more, but he played a huge role in like kind of engaging me, like wanting to dive deeper in the Word and like fix the issue that I was struggling with.
Right.
And then as I was going along, the other guy who I'm still friends with to this day, shout out to Mr. Royce. I love that. He is a
Good old Mr. Royce.
he is a treat, man. He's awesome. He was my senior Bible teacher, but I also had him for history for all 4 years of high school. And like Mr. Royce he was always there to talk to, you know? Like he is super knowledgeable, and me and my buddy, my friend, we always went to Mr. Royce with questions. He was the guy, like, we could ask him and say, like, hey, we're struggling with this. What do you have to say about it? And if he didn't know the answer, he would find the answer and come and tell us. And to this day, like, when we graduated, he was the first person I went to and said, hey, I need your phone number. Like, when can I have your phone number so I can text you?
Well, because that's the benefit, like you talked about earlier, of having somebody you can go to with those questions, having that relationship.
He was basically like my mentor, I would even say. He's basically like my spiritual mentor in my life.
That's awesome.
And he literally took me, like, to this day, I mean, literally, like, we go over to his house. He just invites us to his house.
That's hilarious.
He's got 6 kids. He just invites us over.
He's literally going there after
I'm going
this.
I'm going there after
going
this to hang out. And we play card games all night.
That's crazy.
We play card games at night, and we just, like, that's just what we do.
Yeah.
And we talk. We have a relationship. And he really, like, helped me understand, like, this is what God looks like. This is what a man of God looks like. Like, obviously, a lot of people, like, you're trying to become more and more like a better person every day. You know, become more and more like Jesus every day. That's something my dad's always told me. And like, I look at him and I'm like, he's a guy that I can look up to and really, like, see myself trying to not become. You don't want to, like, I don't, you know what I'm saying? But like, at the same time, he's a guy that I look up to.
He sets a good example.
And he sets a great example of what a godly man looks like in this society.
Makes it possible.
Yeah. It makes me realize, like, if he's able to do it, and he has a bunch of kids, he has a family, and if he's able to do it, then I know I can do it. You know what I'm saying?
That's like we're supposed to be living epistles, right?
Yes.
So people are supposed to see our lives and be able to understand us through that, understand Jesus through that. And that sounds like exactly what you did with him. It's like you were able to see his life and how he acted things out and be like, that makes sense to me. I can understand Jesus through that. I can understand my relationship through that. And that's just really cool.
Yeah. So
and you hit on something too when you were talking about the one teacher who had that same issue. Right. That's the one thing that that's the reason why we're doing this. That's why we have Just Conversation podcast, because we have such a range of people that we have on, because everybody can relate to somebody else in a different way. Yeah. Like you guys are going to resonate with the youth. We have older people, like we had Jose on, and his knowledge and wisdom. So
people struggling with like addiction and
we
things like
had,
that.
Childhood trauma. Yeah. So, and that's a way that's an in for God for a lot of people. And that's one of the reasons we love doing this, is because somebody will see this who, is struggling with, the bad marriage, or somebody's going through, that issue or drugs, or so they'll see that, and whether they believe or not, they'll say, oh, well, somebody else is having that issue. Well, then how did they do it? And here we are talking about, the love of God.
And it's like you said, right? You saw because of him and his ability to share, and then you saw him overcome. And so you were like, if God can help him through that, then God can help me through that. Yeah. It's possible for me. And being able to relate to people like that is so important, because when we have our own struggles, we get so closed off, right? It's like, this is my problem. This is my problem. And when you see somebody else who knows what you're going through, that is just so beneficial to you. And then to see that what they're going through, during that, they rely on God, that is just a great way to point someone who doesn't know God to him, right?
I want to add a part 2 to that question too. So it's who was impactful in your walk, but, and you kind of hit on it, and you can go a little deeper if you want. Who was impactful, but especially growing up in the church, was there a time when you said, this is my relationship, this is my Jesus? Like, because there has to be a time growing up, church, you're going to church, you're reading the Bible, you're doing the things that you're taught. When did it become personal? Like, oh, this is me, this is about mine. So start with you. So
because Mason said that he got to a point where he realized that, you kind of needed God to help you through the struggles you're going through. You needed to make a change.
Was there a defining understanding moment where you went, I've been a Christian all my life, I follow God, I believe in God, now this is different, now he's mine?
I mean, I would say it was my sophomore year, that year that I like really kind of, it became personal. It became like I had that time before to kind of like process it, and that time in that sophomore year, I was able to like really understand, like, this isn't just like, the guy that everybody talks about. Like, this guy's here for me. Like, Jesus is here in my life. He's not here, like, he's in the world, and he's working in everybody, but he's personally in my life. Yeah. He has worked in my life. He has shown me that he's working in his life, and he's going to continue to work in my life for the rest of the time that I'm here on this earth. That's what he does. Yeah. Like, it really came down to having people show that to me. That's what it took for me to realize, like, that's what it's like, is I had to see it from other people. I had to see it from my friends. Yeah. I had to see it from adults, like my parents, who have that feeling of, this is my Jesus. This is a personal relationship that I have. And I mean, I think that was probably the biggest like turning point, like freshman year, I like really accepted it. And then sophomore year, I was like, all right, like I'm diving into this. And that's when I started really pushing myself to learn more and dive into the word and understand it on a deeper level than just, oh yeah, I know the Bible stories,
Right. But then actually applying it to yourself.
And then putting it into your life and like saying, oh, this is what my life looks like now. You know, if that's in the Bible and that's what I'm told to act like, then I need to try and apply myself to act that way.
Right.
You know?
Because there's so many, and this is the difference, right, between all the people that know the Bible inside and out, all the scholars that don't believe, but they still know, they have the understanding of Scripture.
Yeah.
It's like they're missing that relationship. And that's the flip, is like when you decide to say, okay, I know about you, I understand you, I've read your words. I actually accept you into my life and actually want to enter into a personal relationship. That's when real change happens. That's when real understanding comes, in my opinion.
Well, that's why I think it's such an important question to tack on to the person, because at that point, when God becomes personal, there's more awareness of pain and sin. And there's also awareness of I'm not alone. So what you grew up knowing, like all of this time, like now all of a sudden things are coming to the surface that you have to deal with on a personal level. This person can't help you anymore. Now it's between you and I, God. So I think that is where there's a change there. It goes from an understanding to knowing. It's like intellect and then the actual
spirituality.
Yeah.
Like it's a spiritual understanding. That's what Paul talks about in Romans, is like, or maybe it's Corinthians, but he says like you're trying to understand spiritual things with your mind, with worldly understandings, but you have to understand spiritual things spiritually. And so that's when you go into the Word and you're seeking for understanding, you don't usually get it in head knowledge. You don't just understand it through your own intellect, but you have this deep understanding that you can't always explain. And that's where the real power comes, I believe. But have you guys had that experience? Was there a point where you turned and said, I accept him as a personal relationship, or was it kind of always there?
I think for me, it was always there. Like, I think for my whole life, I've always wanted to have like my own, like I knew what was right and wrong. I knew growing up in the church, but I think like I always wanted to have my own faith. Like I think I always tried to make it my own, like I modeled it after what I was seeing, growing up around. But I think there was always that part of me that was like, I want to make this my own personal relationship. And then going back to the question of someone who was impactful, it was one of my teachers, Miss Caraway. She's actually our pastor's wife, but she was someone I could always go to for like after school. I'd always go to her classroom if I had questions, and then she was always there to talk. She's very wise, so if I had ever had questions along the way, I would go to her. So
like you were talking about, there was never an instance where there was a change where, oh, wait a minute, this is more real today than it was yesterday.
I don't know. I think maybe like in that aspect of it, it's like maybe when I graduated high school and kind of went into the real world, I was like, oh, like, because earlier we talked about being in that bubble. I think like stepping out of that, and then you're like, oh, I actually have to apply these things. Like, I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if there was ever like a big change in my head. It was more like just a transition that kind of smoothly happened.
Season in a sense.
Right. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I bet you, Bella.
I think for me, like, obviously my faith started because of, like, my parents were a big impact in my life, like, instilling the truth in me from such a young age is why I think I never really doubted my faith, and, like, I knew why that I believed what I believed from such a young age. But I think what, like, really, like, helped me understand it as my personal faith and my personal beliefs was just, like I was talking about earlier, like, that struggle that I had with so much anxiety that was taking over my life. Like, that was like a big part of my life. And I think because of that, like, I was trying to listen to like what everyone else would tell me. And like, I know it was just like trying to help me, but like none of that helped until I actually understood that to be true. And it was like, everyone would be like, you're not in control of your life, but like until I had the experience to know, like I had to like look back and think on all those circumstances that would give me that anxiety and that worry, and I'd be like, well, how else did I get through them but with God? Like every single time, like no matter the panic that was like in me in those circumstances, I got through them every time. They weren't the end of me any time, like it wasn't the end. So like just knowing that, and once I finally came to the realization of that, like I would say that that's kind of when that started. And I don't think that was like one specific time. I think it like happened over the course of like, I had to like grow in that understanding. So I don't think it was like a specific time, but it definitely started like towards when I began getting closer to high school. It was like a little bit like late middle school, early high school was kind of when I finally understood that for real. And it's like, I wouldn't say that my relationship wasn't like super personal before, because I still think it was, but like that's kind of when it clicked for me that it's like, that's like Jesus is there for me, as well as like I don't have to go through it alone. So it's like I had that belief, but that relationship didn't start until I realized all of that.
Yeah, like
Okay.
you might, like you said, you heard those things, you knew them, but it took time for you to fully understand them. You had to experience it for yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is very, I don't know, I find that like, that interests me a lot, to the fact that you can know a lot of things, you can have these beliefs, understand them, but for some reason, God working in whatever mysterious ways, you kind of have to wait to get that full understanding, experience it for yourself, to actually know, to actually like have that foundation to stand on.
And even from just listening, and I want to hear your inspirational person too. In all three of your experiences, what I'm hearing is when you realized everything that you knew, but you needed God. That's when things changed. Like you with what you went through, and even with you when when you graduated, and with you struggling. So that's where it seems like that's a common theme of when that, like when you realize he is who he is, but when you realize you need him at this point, okay, I need you to be that God that I know that you are, that I'm told, that I read, and then that becomes more personal.
I see that more in stories like yours and like ours, where we came to faith later in our lives, because the way it was put to me was like I was seeking, and the guy that you call him a mentor, brought me to faith. I had one of those. He said, I believe that you need to be brought to a point where you think you need God. You need to rely on him. And I see that same narrative through a lot of people that came to faith, later in life. But it was a little bit harder to see. I was kind of looking for it in your guys' story. And I guess there were times, I guess it was more like multiple times throughout your life where you had to be like, let me fall back on this foundation that I know is there, right? And then that's when you kind of reaffirmed your faith. It was like, there he is, and now I'm comfortable, and now I'm at peace, and now he's in control, and like he's got it. So yeah, like I agree. I am seeing this like, I need you, but it seems a lot less, I don't know, prevalent in your guys' story, because it was always there. There was not so much of a question. And maybe that's because like maybe you always had him with you, and so you never had that. He never let that fear get to you.
See, I don't understand that, and I'm always curious about people who have grown up in the church, because I know the time when he came into my life, so I knew that there was a thing.
Yeah,
and
you can
to
see
me,
the difference.
I always thought, even people who grew up in the church, there has to be a time somewhere along the lines where, yeah, you know him and you've grown up with him, but when does he become personal and real? Other than somebody who you've been taught that the experience becomes actually personally yours. Like, what about your inspirational person?
So I definitely have a few. Like I said, like my parents were the ones who really instilled that relationship. But like outside of like family members, I have like people who like were like more of like the friends aspect, and then I have someone was more of a mentor to me. So like speaking about friends, one of my best friends she's like the reason that I started like wanting to grow in my faith more, because she was very new to it, because she came to the school that I'm at now in 7th grade. So I'd been there since 6th grade, and then she came the next year, and she kind of had no previous like background of like, she didn't know a lot about Christianity, but she had that curiosity for it, and she wanted to know more about it. And when I met her, like she would kind of ask me these questions. And it's like a lot of it I could answer, and a lot of it I was like, oh, like I want to know the answer to this too. So that kind of led us to grow together. And there were definitely times when I think she struggled as well. Like there were times for her where I was like the person that she would need to like confide in about certain things, and then there were times that I would confide in her about certain things. But now, like today, like after everything that we both went through, together, I think that that's one of the reasons I'm so strong in my faith, and that because she helped me get there and I helped her get there, so it was kind of like we helped each other thing. And she's still to this day one of my best friends. And then like mentor wise, I also was gonna say Miss Caraway. She's just, oh my goodness, she's she's so wise. I will like go into her classroom like every morning and talk to her still. Like she's not one of my teachers anymore, but I'll still like go into her classroom every morning. And then she's also helps lead our youth group because she's our pastor's wife, so she helps lead our youth group. So just a lot of those questions I have, she's already there for me to talk to her anyway, and I've gotten so many like good answers for that out of her. And she's really like shaped the person I am, like because I've had her as a teacher. So like from that aspect, she shaped me. And then also knowing her outside of that and knowing her spiritually and knowing that side of her has also really helped shape the person that I am.
That's a crazy concept to me. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I keep on noting now that like I'm sitting here listening to this and I'm thinking about it.
You're listening?
You notice like what?
You're listening now?
Yeah.
I wasn't here before.
No,
I just checked in.
No, I was just like I've been thinking about it now. Like if you notice a trend in the fact that I said 2 teachers, Bella said a teacher, and Josh said a teacher.
Yeah.
We spent 7 hours a day with these people, and they built a relationship with us more than just, oh, I know your name because you're in my class, you know? And look what that has done in our lives for
I
all
think
three of us.
that's also part of going to like a Christian school.
That's what I was going to talk about.
Yeah, is that these teachers, like, they're not afraid to share their faith.
Yeah.
They're not going to get in trouble for sharing their faith. So it's a much different relationship than you would have in like a public school. Like I'm sure there are those teachers in public schools who are able to have those relationships outside of school, but I think it's just so much more valuable when you're having a relationship in the classroom, but there's also a deeper relationship that's rooted in Christ as well, and it's rooted in like that they can share that stuff with us.
And you guys probably didn't even know, right? You didn't even know that those relationships were building and that bond was being created.
But it's like in that time you're just in their class. You're just learning from them, and you're just trying to get a good grade in the class. You're not thinking about it like that.
But it's like, sorry.
I was gonna say like Miss Caraway came to the school when I was in 8th grade. I would have never thought we were going to her husband's church. I would have never thought we would have this like relationship with her. And I'm sure Mason would have never thought when he was in middle school that he would have the same relationship with Miss Royce that he has now. Like I think all of us, you know, seeing that from the flip side now, it's like I don't think we would have pictured that happening, you know, in the beginning. And
hopefully you guys see from this too. You see what you can be to somebody else.
Right.
You know,
that's like what we talked
thing.
about with youth group is like that's what they did. They were able to pour into you guys
and invested in
the
you.
way that you needed to be poured into, and they impacted your life and your faith greatly. And that was the other thing I was going to say, which is wild to me, is that like I want so badly to live in a world where every person I turn to knows Jesus.
Yeah.
How cool would that be?
Be awesome.
To have faith be just a thing that's like I go to the grocery store and I bump into somebody and we can just like enjoy the connection of like Jesus loves us. Like just to have that community. But it doesn't happen. And that, I mean, it really sucks.
Yeah.
And like, that's a very great thing to be able to go to a school where everybody you know at least knows of the Bible and maybe outwardly, maybe not always inwardly, but they proclaim to know Jesus. And you can actually talk about that with them and share that connection. And then it's scary. You graduate and you go into the real world and there's people who like, you can't turn in every direction and see someone who knows Jesus. Cause that is what I've always imagined or dreamed of, is like this world where we could go out and just be Jesus followers and not feel any sort of like weight or judgment for it.
Well, and you have to remember too, like we're so stomach is real.
That's fine.
We are so spoiled and blessed, right? Because we're not going to die for our faith today.
Yeah.
There's some places in the world where
it was worse than it is today. I'm complaining about how terrible it is now.
Yeah.
Like the apostles were literally killed for being
Well, I mean,
Jesus
I'm talking about even in the world today. Like you can't have a Bible in the house, or you can't profess Jesus because you'll be killed. So, I mean, just imagine how, you know, we forget that, how blessed we are to live in a country where we can sit here and openly just talk about it, where people were like smuggling these kind of videos in just, you know, and Bible. So it's crazy that there's such a different world that we're not even exposed to.
Yeah, I mean, praise God that there's like we can actually talk to people about our faith and not be condemned or like literally persecuted for it. And then we have the opportunity for them to know Jesus without having to, have the fear of whatever could happen to them. That is cool.
Well, is there anything that you guys want to talk about, or anything that you had on your mind? All right, well, before we wrap up, then.
Don't
Mason,
do drugs.
Don't do drugs. No, that's perfect. I mean, Mason literally said he just started listening, so I can't imagine this guy much.
What happened the first time?
He'll catch up.
What did we just talk about?
So now, just if you guys can give, if you guys can just give maybe some advice to each one of you, maybe give some advice to any youth out there who might be listening, some encouragement, or
If you could give advice to your younger selves, kind of what would you say? Yeah.
That's whoa. Now
I know we can take a second to think about it. Yeah.
That's
if you were asking me about my younger self, I'd have to write a book.
Yeah, I feel like I would have a lot to say just at 18.
I mean, I guess like you guys, right? Growing up in your faith. Because it's saying like, okay, would you give advice to your younger selves? For you guys, I don't know if you guys would change much about your coming to faith, right? Am I wrong in saying that?
No, you're not wrong at all. But the one thing that I would say is, and I feel like I went through this anyway, like I don't think I ever just believed what I believed because of the household I was in. I feel like I did go through something where I was like, okay, I know why I believe what I believe, but that's just because like the knowledge that my parents instilled in me. But it's just like, don't believe what you believe just because of the household that you're in, but like seek like those things, like seek that faith for yourself and ask your own questions. Like Mason was talking about earlier, asking questions is so important and so powerful. So it's like, don't just accept that just because you're in that household. Like find it out for yourself and learn about it for yourself and dig into that for yourself so that it can be your own faith. And that's like another thing we were talking about is like when it becomes personal. So do all those things so that it can become personal and so that you know why you believe those things.
You can actually give an account.
Yes.
And Bella's not lying too, because she's a note taker in church. So she's working on it herself. I can back that up. But
That's crazy.
I think for me, like if I were to give advice to like my younger self or to like anybody out there, like if you're going through something, like stressful, or if you're worried, just like put your trust in God. Like God, it'll work out if you just, know that God's got you. So like I used to be so anxious about so many things. I would get like so stressed out, and like, on the flip side, seeing that after of that, like everything works out, maybe not always like how I wanted it to, but like I remember, so this is kind of silly, but like when we went on our mission trip for school, I was so scared to go on. I was scared of airplanes. And so like I prayed and prayed. I'm like, God, I'm so scared. And I did it and I was fine. Like, I know that's silly, but like, things like that.
Fear is fear, that's.
Well, that's very powerful to say, when you're worried, just put your faith in him. You said it so like lackadaisically, like, yeah, just put your faith, it'll work out. Like it's fine.
I know it's not as easy. It's easier.
It is easier said than done,
but.
yeah. But that's very meaningful for a lot of people, is like to realize and to not to trust him. This is something I'm learning now, is like you can't trust him to do what you want to happen. But what I can say is, God, I trust you to do what's best for me.
Right.
And that is so powerful, because that gives you so much security. He's like, he's in control. I trust whatever you're doing in my life to be what's best for me. It might not be what I want. I might kick and scream on our way there, but I still trust you. And that is the most important thing. I think that's great advice. And you've been thinking over here.
This is a loaded question, because I feel like I would want to tell myself a lot of stuff. One thing that I think I would always want to tell myself is, don't be afraid to step into something with faith being the thing that's like guiding you through it. I feel like a lot of times in my past, I've made a lot of decisions just going into it with faith being in the back. And like, I'm just going in like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
Oh, my physical body can handle this.
Right.
And I wish that if I could go back, I would want to go in and the mistakes that I've made and go into it with faith being what's leading it off, because it probably would have stopped me from doing a lot of the mistakes that I've made in my life.
Yeah.
I got this, God.
In my head, I think I just jump right in and I'm going to be like, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to come out of it. Everything's going to be okay. Yeah. But in the end, we talked about like the guilt and stuff like that, and you don't got it.
You don't got it. Yeah.
Like we don't got it. And we were talking about like how it becomes real when God has to be in your life.
Yeah.
You know, I wish that like that only comes if you're willing to put faith as the thing that you're grounded on.
Absolutely.
You know, you hear, we all talk about music and stuff like that. The song "Firm Foundation." You know.
Yep.
Yeah.
You gotta have a firm foundation.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, what like all these things that are gonna happen to you, any of the rocky patches you go through, any of the problems that come up in your life are gonna be so hard to get through.
Yeah.
And you're gonna get yourself into a place where you're not gonna know what to do.
Yeah.
And you'll tell yourself, "Oh, I got this. Oh, I got this. Oh, I got this." And in reality, you don't. But if you put your faith in front of, if you put your faith in God and use that foundation that He has, which took me my entire elementary and middle school time to figure out, I was able to get to the point where like now, if I go through a time where I'm struggling with something, I know that He's there.
Yeah.
I can jump into something like this new career. That's a huge change from what I ever wanted to. And there's a portion of me that's like, it's scary. Mm-hmm. It's a dangerous job, but I know that I'm jumping into this with God.
Yeah.
Like he's going to be there every step of the way. I trust that He's going to take care of me. I trust that He's going to help me through every tough moment. And it makes me feel like, okay, like I can actually do this.
Yeah.
Like the I got this feeling feels like it can be a reality because I have the perfect wingman.
It's because God's got you.
Yeah,
right. You think
exactly.
you've got this. God's got you.
That's exactly it. It's not you got this. It's
God's got you.
And that's what the anomaly is to people outside of faith when they look at us, is because they don't understand that foundation.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, because we have that constant in our lives. You know, they don't understand that and never will understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this was amazing, guys. I mean, I'm so glad you guys came
awesome.
and
Thank you.
just sat down and talked with us. I don't know what else to say. I mean, we can just close in prayer, and maybe we'll keep talking. I don't know. You have to get to your teachers. Your teachers.
No, it's not. I got
the
time.
rules.
We're good.
All right. Well, yeah, we'll close everything up. Thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you guys for being here. And all right. I say like I'll turn off the cameras and we'll pray, but I never turn off the cameras.
Yeah.
So we'll just pray. Yeah.
Okay.
Amen. Okay, well, before we wrap up, I just had a question that came to my mind, so God's telling me I got to say it.
Oh, you think so?
And I think this is really important, especially having you guys here, is if, when, and how do you hear God's voice?
Ooh, good question.
I think that's going to be very helpful to anybody who's young and listening, to help discern, is God calling me, or what is this? Like, what is that to you?
Do you hear God's voice?
I don't think it's like an actual voice. Like, it's not an audible voice. I think sometimes it's like
That calling, that pull.
I don't want to say it's like a feeling, because it's not about how, like, I don't want to make it sound like it's about how you feel, but it's almost like this, like I know this is what I should do based on what God, like, it's almost like I guess an instinct in a way. It's like I kind of am feeling pulled like this way to do this thing. And obviously you have to pray about, like, it's not just like, oh, I feel like this is God. You have to, like, I remember in chapel, actually, I don't know if you remember this, Mason. I don't think you were there for that, Bella, but there was a lady who said, she said a lot of times, God is telling you to do something if it's something that you don't want to do. She said, so if it's like going against what you want and your will, she said, but you're feeling pulled to do that. She said that's usually
definitely a confirmation, yeah.
So I think that really stuck with me, and I've been like, yeah, so like if I feel like I'm being pulled to do something that maybe isn't my will, but like I'll pray about it, and then
I feel like there are a bunch of different layers. Like, I've heard people who say that they can hear Him audibly, and there are people who hear Him when they read their Bible, people who hear Him when they pray. Or like for me, I think specifically it's like when I'm in like a time of worship, that's kind of my one-on-one time with God, and that makes sense because that's like that's
the passion He put inside you.
Yeah, so it's like that's the passion and the desire that He's like put inside of me to want to do to glorify Him. So that's, I feel like, a big time in my life when I have the most like like I can feel his presence so much. Like, and even at Momentum, that was really clear to me because, like I said, there was like a lot of amazing worship at Momentum, and there was this one night which was like their worship night, so it was pretty much like worship the entire night. Like, there was no like message, it was just worship, and so many things became clear to me that night.
There was a message.
And well, yeah. Yeah, so but like so many things became clear to me that night, and it was just amazing to see that. And over, like, that's when I feel peace over things that I've been struggling about and like struggling with and worrying over. Like, I think that's time when I feel peace about it, and that's when I can start not focusing on the worry, because now that I have that peace and focusing on what path God wants me to go on. And so those are like the biggest times in my life when I've heard his voice, not like audibly, but like heard him calling me to do certain things.
That's so powerful. You said something that I can't remember, so maybe I'm not supposed to say it. Shoot. Things changed, things became clear, and you felt the peace. Right. Once you felt that peace, you let go of your own worries of like, what do I want? And you said you can seek his will. Mm-hmm. And I think that's when we truly get somewhere. When we start feeling like our foot's on solid ground is when we decide like, yeah, here's what I want. But, you know, and it's not even something you do. Like, you don't personally set aside, you know, sometimes you can, but you're just in your worship. You're able to set aside your will and surrender to God's. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it's empowerment, I think. It's really cool. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything to share with your...
So I'm going to answer this kind of like in a way it's going to seem kind of ironic because we've talked about this, but I'm going to answer it with an I don't know. And I only say that because I'm only 18 years old, right? And I've had to make decisions, but feel like in my life, I've never had this like moment where it just feels like this is what the exact thing, like not through a worship song, like not through the Bible. Like, those are all ways, like obviously those are ways that I go and I communicate with God, but I think God has something for each and every person, and it's okay to not know how he's talking to you. Yeah. He's going to get through one way or another. Mm-hmm. He's going to figure out, he's going to talk to you. He's going to give you what you need however he feels is necessary, whether that's through my best friend, whether that's through my teacher, whether that's through the Bible, whether it is through the worship song, whatever it is, he's going to get through. And I personally, in my own life, I don't know what that thing is but you get to this point where I feel like you be patient about it and keep praying about it, and you're constantly thinking about it, and you stepping into faith with it, and God will give you the answer one way or another. However that is, I don't know. He shows up all the time in my life. Like, I look back on my life now and I'm like, oh, that's how God showed up in my life. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, like he showed up exactly how I needed him to show up in that moment. And it was not anything as what I expected, right. You know, but he always showed up and gave me the answer that I was looking for. Yeah. And that's one thing that, like, for me is like being patient and consistently like going back to whatever that thing is that you want answered, whatever you need God's help with, keep going at it, keep talking to him about it. Yeah. He's going to get to you when he's ready, when he has the answer figured out for you, which he hasn't figured out for you, but he's going to put it into your life when he's ready. He's got it figured out. You know,
when you're ready. when he thinks you're ready.
When he thinks we're ready, it's up to him. It's not up to us. As much as we wish we could just say, oh yeah, please take whatever away from me. If he's not ready to take that away, maybe he's trying to get you to get something from that. Maybe he's trying. I mean, I remember I prayed when I struggled. I prayed every night. I was like, take this away from me. And I kept struggling with it every night. And it took me until I was able to understand I need God in my life for him to finally give me peace of mind in it. And I look back at that in my life and I'm like, he showed up. Yeah. And I wish it looked different, but to this day, now I think about it in that moment, I wish it looked different. I would never change it for a thing. Yeah. Because now I can look at it and say, God showed up right there in that point, and it is what made me into the person that I am today.
I love that answer.
Yeah, hindsight for a Christian is one of the most powerful tools that when we can actually look back, and our validations come from the past up till now. Yeah. So we don't have to think about the future because you're like, oh, I know he showed up here and he showed up here and he showed up here.
So you know he will show up in the future for you, you know?
I see that. I know. I love that answer of like, because what I hear you say is, I don't know, but I trust that he will talk to me.
Yeah.
And there is just so much power in that. It's like, for me to say, like, yeah, I have no idea how God talks to me. I don't know. But what I do know is that I can trust him to guide me.
Yeah.
And that's all I need to know. That, to me, that's just such a childlike faith, in my opinion. It's like,
It's the epitome
I
of
don't know
faith,
what he's going to do. I don't know how he's going to guide me, but I do know that he will guide me.
And whatever way that is, it's gonna
It's up to
be
him.
it's up to
Work out
him,
the
and it's
right
gonna
way.
work
What's good
out
for me.
what he
Yes.
wants, and it's gonna be the best for my life, whether I think it or not. And if it could look like what Josh said, where it might not always be the thing that you want to do. Most often, it's not the thing you want to do, but it's gonna be the right thing, and you're gonna realize it. Maybe it takes a month, maybe it takes a year, maybe it takes 4 years for you to realize, oh, I
That's
get
what
it
I
now.
needed.
I get it.
I've been there where it's taken a long time for me to finally say, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that question. That was cool.